On behalf of the members and friends of First Church of Christ Scientists, South Lake Tahoe, California, welcome to our 2021 Spiritual Summit, Healing Solutions to Life's Challenges. Some of you joining us today may be unfamiliar with Christian Science. It is a Bible-based religion founded in 1879. A key focus stems from the teachings of Christ Jesus. The founder of Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy, was led to her discovery in 1866. We are here today to share with you how that discovery helped to unlock truths from the Bible. Our speakers will be referencing the Holy Bible and the writings of Mrs. Eddy, including her seminal work, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. Our South Lake Tahoe Church will happily provide you copies of those books if you wish. Simply email a request to firstchurchslt@gmail.com and we will send you a copy. We had intended for this summit to be an in-person event. Given the reopening and gathering uncertainties, that just wasn't possible. Instead, we are pleased to host an international gathering with participants from the United Kingdom, Japan, and Southern California. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. We are pleased now to welcome Andrew Brewis, who will provide a prelude of his original music. Andrew tells us that becoming a writer and performer of hymns and inspirational Christian music is something that really found him, and now it's part of who he is. The more he writes, the more he discovers how music can spiritually prod and poke us, stirring, awakening, and ultimately healing. 8 of his compositions have been published in the New Christian Science Hymnal Supplement, which is used in churches all over the world. Today's speakers have been sharing ideas with Andrew, and he has selected or written music and lyrics to amplify those messages. Andrew's CDs are available through a Christian Science reading room, from the Christian Science Publishing Society, or directly from his website, andrewbrewis.com. He is also featured on hymnstream.com.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. It's wonderful, and it's great to be here, even if virtually. So I'm going to play a few spiritual songs that will reflect the talk that we have coming up immediately after me. So hope this will put us in the right place. This is a song called As Each Day Unfolds, and the words are by Alison Newberry. As each day unfolds, we can rest. As each day unfolds, we know our lives are ordered. As each day unfolds, we know our lives are blessed. We can know as each day unfolds. Within God's haven I abide, above confusion, fear and strife. In love and serenity I confide. God's tender care will guide my life. As each day unfolds, we can rest. As each day unfolds, we know our lives are ordered. As each day unfolds, we know our lives are blessed. We can know as each day unfolds. Though others rush on through the race, I know God's goodness never will cease, and trusting in His perfect grace, I am complete within a peace. I am complete with inner peace. As each day unfolds, we can rest. As each day unfolds, we know our lives are ordered. As each day unfolds, we know our lives are blessed. We can know as each day unfolds. As each day unfolds, we can rest. As each day unfolds, we know our lives are ordered. As each day unfolds, we know our lives are blessed. We can know as each day unfolds. We can know as each day unfolds. Heavenly presence, the fountain of wisdom and light, be thou my defense in the daytime, my guardian and guard through the night, my guardian and guard through the night. When the flood tides of earth overwhelm me, I will enter the ark of thy love. I will open the windows of heaven and welcome the incoming dove. O heavenly, heavenly Father, the fountain of wisdom and light, be thou my defense in the daytime, my guardian and guard through the night. And God through the night. How bright is the day of redemption, when sorrow and sickness shall cease. The bow in the cloud, the bow in the cloud, the bow in the cloud, its promise. We are circled by spiritual peace. Presence, the fountain of wisdom and light, be thou my defense in the daytime, my guardian and guard through the night, my guardian and guard through the night, my guardian and guard through the night, my guardian, my guide through the night. This next one is called In the Secret Place, and the words are written by the playwright William Luce. And I know he wrote lots of poems that Martin Brooms put the, or is it Broomers? I'm not sure how you pronounce that in the United States of America. Yeah, and this is called In the Secret Place, but it's a new setting by myself. In the secret place, in the heart of prayer, there is always light shining everywhere. You will learn to love with a gentle grace when you talk with God in the secret place. When you talk with God in the secret place, God is calling you to this world of light, like a mother's voice calling in the night. Leave your broken dreams, drop your load of care at the door of truth, at the gate of prayer. In the secret place, in the heart of prayer, there is always light shining everywhere. You will learn to love with a gentle grace when you talk with God in the secret place. When you talk with God in the secret place, bring your childlike faith to his open arms. In that secret place, nothing hurt or harms. You will be at peace, you will know his face, you will find your home in the secret place. In the secret place, in the heart of prayer, there is always a light shining everywhere. You will learn to love with a gentle grace when you talk with God in the secret place. When you talk with God in the secret place. When you talk with God in the secret place. This next one is also by William Luce, and it's called Under His Wing. There is no sadness under his wing. There's only gladness under his wings. There is no sadness under his wing. There's only gladness under his wing. Love is my shepherd, love is my king. I'll stay forever under his wing, sheltered in love, where angels sing. All must be well under his wing. There is no danger Under his wing, there is no stranger. Under his wing, light of the ages, song of the sky. Love is eternal, love cannot die. Sheltered in love, where angels sing, all is well. Under his wing, there is no sadness. Under his wing, there's only gladness. Under his wing, love is my shepherd, love is my king, I'll stay forever. Under his wing, sheltered in love, where angels sing, all must be well. Under his wing, all must be well. Under his wing, all is well. Under his wing.
Thank you, Andrew Brewis, and thanks again for joining us from London, England. Our first speaker is Melanie Wahlberg, a Christian Science practitioner and member of the Christian Science Board of Lectureship from Lake Forest, California. Melanie grew up in Southwest Michigan, learning little by little how reliable prayer could be, particularly once she was on her own in college. After finishing a doctorate in mathematics, she became a college professor and truly enjoyed teaching, especially helping reluctant students become confident with new mathematical ideas. But increasingly, when students came to her office for help, she found herself talking with them about the excitement of growing spiritually. After just 2 years at the college, she resigned her position and began accepting calls as a Christian Science practitioner. These days, she works from her home office in the Los Angeles area and gets to see lives transformed by the healing ideas of Christian Science. She and her husband, who is also a practitioner, have 3 teenagers who stay busy with sports and school. Of course, with help from Mom, everyone should certainly get an A in math. It is our pleasure to welcome Melanie.
Thanks, Joe. And hello, everybody. I am Melanie Wahlberg, and I'm joining you here from my home studio, my studio office here in Southern California. And it's so nice to be able to spend a little time with you all connecting this way and thinking about big ideas. You know, those ideas that aren't just fun to think about, exciting, but that actually do something, that transform our lives and help us transform the lives of others. This talk is sponsored by First Church of Christ Scientist, South Lake Tahoe, and it's part of their 2021 Spiritual Summit. So thank you to all of them. Our title today is Never Alone, How Spiritual Ideas Work in Us. And I know that there are a lot of moving parts in that title. What are spiritual ideas? What's their source? How do they work in us? And what does all of that have to do with never being alone? And so I promise to unpack that more as we get into the material more. Well, it's spring here in California and in a lot of parts of the world, and I'm definitely feeling the promise of a fresh start. The year 2020 was definitely difficult, different. And even though businesses and communities are opening back up again, I think I don't need to tell you all that we're still facing some unprecedented challenges. And folks are doing the best they can, you know, adapting, coping, sometimes just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen next. That's not a very confident posture. Are we stuck that way, though? I mean, are we stuck, for example, waiting for a vaccine so we can go back to living our lives? Do things like the pandemic, or racial inequality, or political tension, or even the more common problems like loneliness or depression, do those define us? Or do we have something within us that we actually bring to our circumstances to help and to heal? I think even for those of us that sometimes feel stuck, we know intuitively that there's a way forward, a good way. Now, this isn't to talk about COVID, for example, or even racial inequality or political tension, as important as those are to discuss thoughtfully. We actually have a bigger context today. What I'm hoping for is that during our time together, we get a mental shift that changes our outlook and that enables us to live fuller lives and even help others to live fuller lives. And I know that sounds big, but I don't think that's too much to ask of our time together here. So what is it that moves us forward then when we feel stuck? Have you ever had a problem that you couldn't seem to solve? That can be a lonely feeling, even if there are others around that are trying to help us solve it. But then maybe you got a little inspiration about how things could move forward. Sometimes just becoming aware of the first step or two we could take dislodges that stuck feeling and gives us the confidence to move ahead. I love it when that happens. I think we all do. Well, today I'm going to be talking about something that's with us that brings inspiration. And you know what inspiration feels like, right? It feels great. It lifts off that lonely feeling. It lifts off feelings of stress. And it can even have a good impact on our health. It can even have a good impact on the health of those around us. And that's exciting to think about. Now, when I talk about inspiration, I think a really natural question that comes is, how do we get more of it? I mean, we know on some level that inspiration makes a difference. What's its source? We've all been inspired sometimes, but how do we do that more continuously? Well, its source is a word that I've been hearing more in conversations lately. Really, I'd say over the last 12 or 15 months, during lockdown, during the pandemic, where people are really maybe a little bit more trying to help one another. Neighbors and coworkers and family members are trying to support one another. And this word comes up in conversation, and it's God. I know that word evokes something a little different in each one of us. When I use the word God, I'm not thinking of a superhuman figure that makes arbitrary decisions about our lives, that blesses some people but not others. Because the Bible, especially the New Testament, puts forward a view of God as divine love, not as a superhuman, but as love itself, or as divine mind, infinite mind. I like that one, that the source of the ideas that I'm talking about today. So when I use the word God, you can think divine love or infinite mind. Those are concepts that help clarify our thought, and I'll do the same thing. So ideas from God are empowering and uplifting because they show us that everything that God made, including our own identity, is inherently good. How does that work? Well, when you get a good idea, you actually learn something about yourself. I mean, we probably start by learning something about whatever we were thinking about. Maybe you figured out a way to master some new technology or streamline a project at work. So sure, you learn about that concept. But when a new idea stirs something in us, something original, we can't help but also learn something about our own true nature. I mean, you feel that connection. You feel that connection and you start to realize we are so much more than, a chunk of matter that eats and breathes and tries not to get sick. We're so much more than a mixture of strengths and weaknesses that's based on something material. Actually, and the Bible indicates this, actually we're like God, our maker, spiritual and pure, even when it doesn't seem that way. God is the universal divine parent. And as children of God, we're naturally kind and wise and capable, and ideas from God keep showing us that through the experiences that we have with these inspirations. Now, those experiences are different from the ones that we have with the kind of dull or repetitious or even demeaning thoughts that all seem to come to us at one time or another. And so I want to make a distinction here. Those dull thoughts don't come from God. They're not even innate to our own natural way of thinking, which flows entirely from God. You know, if you've ever driven on the highway, I think you know what I'm talking about. These thoughts are more like reactions, you know, and they may not be lasting or wise or helpful. They kind of move in circles, or even move us in circles. I mean, I think, you know, everybody here has probably experienced that kind of discouraging cycle where we get the same few thoughts over and over again about a situation where you're not moving forward, but you're not really letting it go either. You know, you're just kind of feeling stuck. That's why we intuitively know the difference when we get some inspiration from God. Ideas from God bring us bigger concepts of freedom and possibility. I mean, they're expansive. You know, you can almost feel it inside when you get that kind of inspiration. Ideas from God do something. They move us forward in a way that the brain or willpower or that type of thing just can't. And, you know, I might say here that this Bible-based notion of God as an infinite, loving source of healing ideas is especially important these days, you know, I mean 2021, where we're hearing reports not just of an epidemic and a pandemic, but what some folks refer to as an infodemic. And you probably know right what I mean as soon as I use that word. I mean, that's that kind of head-spinning avalanche of news that comes at us all the time. Infodemic. What do we do with that? Well, you know, as it might not be helpful, and as some of the reports are self-contradicting, you know, we know that it's not helpful for us to just take all of it in. Limiting social media can help, definitely. But it's interesting, the infodemic isn't just the internet's fault. You know, it's not just the stuff that we read about or see online. Really, the infodemic to me has to do with thought. You know, again, it's those dull, repetitive, depressing thoughts that come to us. And so that's why it's so important that we learn more about inspiration and its true source so that we can be guided by those clear, useful ideas that come to us from God. Ideas that make a difference, ideas that move us forward with clarity. Ideas that transform lives. So let me give an example of that. How does an idea from God have a good impact on our health and even maybe in a broader sense transform our life? I want to give an example that happened to a friend of mine when he was a senior in high school. He was experiencing quite a bit of pain in his mouth. His mouth was swollen and his teeth hurt. His wisdom teeth were actually coming in and not in a good way. And he moped around the house for several days, I think, in pain and wasn't able to eat properly. And at one point, his mother finally said to him, okay, you need to do something here. I want you to either go to the dentist or if you like, you can call a practitioner of Christian Science. And I'll talk more about Christian Science and about the practice of Christian Science as I get farther today. But for now, let me just say that a practitioner of Christian Science is somebody whose full-time job is to take prayer requests and then respond in prayer and with healing. And so this young man, when his mom gave him the option of, you know, dentist or calling a practitioner of Christian Science, went upstairs to his room to think. And while he was sitting there, he heard the family downstairs happily preparing for and eating dinner. And he decided, okay, I'm going to make this phone call. So he called the practitioner. And she actually turned out to be a family friend of theirs. So when he was talking to her, he explained the problem. My teeth hurt, I can't eat properly, my mouth is swollen, I look funny, I'm miserable. He laid that all out. And when she responded, interestingly, she didn't even say anything to him about his teeth or his mouth. She asked about his family and how his parents were and that type of questioning. And at first he thought, did she even hear me? My teeth hurt here. But he started responding to the questions, and it turned out that he was very, very interested, driven to buy a new motorcycle. I think he was about 18 years old, and he found the motorcycle of his dreams and had even made a down payment on it and was very eager to buy it. But his parents didn't feel that way about it. His parents were concerned about his safety and not sure that he was ready to have this responsibility. Well, he explained that to the practitioner, and she said to him, I'm sure there's enough divine love surrounding you. You have enough good ideas from divine mind to stay safe on your motorcycle rides, but is it worth it? I mean, do you really need the bike right now? Is it worth the discord between you and your parents? And she just left him with that thought. So he got off the phone, and I think he struggled for a few moments. I mean, he really wanted that bike. As I said, he'd even made a down payment on it. But as he thought about it, he could see that it might be worth it to wait. He remembered the commandment, honor thy father and mother. And after a struggle, he found the humility within himself to decide, I think I'll wait. I really want that motorcycle, but I'm even going to be willing to forfeit the down payment. I'm going to wait and get it at a time when my parents are more comfortable. I'll wait until I move out, and I'll get it then. And after he thought that, he said he felt such a sense of lightness and stress just melt away that he didn't even realize he was feeling. And in that moment, all the pain and swelling vanished, just melted away. He went downstairs and had a nice dinner with his family and his parents, and went forward from there. His wisdom teeth came in properly, and he still has them today, and they're in good working order. Now, how did an idea change things here? He had the idea, this timeless good idea, to honor his father and mother. And that brought a sense of relief and release. And he found his healing. Well, that was a great example of how inspiration changed a life. How do we do that? How do we find that kind of life-changing inspiration consistently? He did get the bike of his dreams, by the way. I should add that. A year or two later, he got the motorcycle that he really wanted. How do we find that kind of inspiration? Well, we have an example of somebody whose life was so based on these universally true, timeless, blessing ideas, healing ideas, that 2,000 years after he said, "My words shall not pass away," we're actually still saying his words. And you might know I'm talking about Christ Jesus. Because of the spiritual nature behind it, some of his words have become part of our everyday vocabulary today. Phrases like "judge not" or "turn the other cheek," and I'm sure you can think of other ones. Jesus taught us so much about how to live lives, including how to live lives feeling close to God and feeling that ongoing inspiration. Now, I'm only going to share just 3 bits of wisdom from all of his teachings, but it's enough to give us a sense of how to consistently be inspired with clear, useful, reliable ideas from God. So I'm going to start with something from what many Christians refer to as the Sermon on the Mount. And I'm reading this out of the King James Version of the Bible. Again, this is counsel for how to be inspired. In the book of Matthew, we read that Jesus said, "Blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled." What does that have to do with inspiration? Well, the words hunger and thirst, obviously communicate some urgency here. And to me, that means that Jesus was telling us that it is absolutely worth our time and our devotion of thought to pursue righteousness. Righteousness could be thought of as obedient living, good obedient living based on right ideas. And when I think about that, I think, okay, righteousness, hungering and thirsting after obedient living is not always easy. You know it when you're doing it, though. I mean, you know when you're putting God, when you're putting divine love before any personal want. And when we do that, it brings such a feeling of innocence and childlikeness. It melts away anything that felt like an obstacle between us and God, between us and an infinite mind. And when we do that, it creates this wonderful flow of inspiration. And I am living proof of that. I have felt that experience. So hungering and thirsting after obedient living is a good step towards being consistently inspired. Second, Jesus exemplified humility, right? I mean, he was so convinced of the rightness of the source of the ideas, God, his father, mother, that he was willing to lay aside any personal want or agenda and really seek new points of view in prayer, like our friend with the motorcycle. I feel like the key to his healing, and his mouth was healed, his wisdom teeth were healed. I mean, he had tremendous, you could almost think of it as mental surgery in his mouth when he expressed this great humility, that the power of humility is remarkable. And along those lines, Jesus said, and this is in the book of John, "My judgment is just because I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me." That's not always easy. Again, I mean, in fact, sometimes I've asked myself, do I ever not seek my own will? I love the idea of conforming to a higher idea, to God's will. And when we do that, we often find ourselves letting go of old thoughts that we didn't even realize were rattling around. I mean, thoughts that were limiting us that we weren't even really aware of. And again, that makes space for the inspiration that we're craving. So, expressing humility. And then third, Jesus taught the practice of trusting the ideas when they come to us and recognizing that they're applicable for everybody. They're practical for everyone. It doesn't rely on any personal talent or ability. And along those lines, Jesus said, this is from the same verse, "I can of mine own self do nothing." A spiritual idea comes to us with everything needed to see it through. Now, I wasn't there, of course, with Jesus, and I don't want to make it sound like I know exactly what he was thinking, because I sure don't. But my understanding from reading the Gospels and learning more about Jesus' teachings and healing ministry is that when he was inspired with an idea from God, he didn't push back or think, well, that's good, but somebody else should do it, or anything like that. When he was inspired that way, he went forward with it. And living that way, just as a lifestyle, enabled him to do things that looked impossible to everyone around him. He could heal disease that others thought was incurable. Or he could transform the character of somebody that others thought was a lost cause. He could restore what seemed lost. I don't think anybody expected Jesus to be able to restore a withered hand or failing eyesight. But he did that in a natural way. He was impelled by counsel, ideas from God, and he carried them out. Well, there's so much more that we could learn from Jesus and about Jesus, from reading the New Testament especially, but even those three ideas, hungering and thirsting after obedient living, expressing humility, and trusting the ideas as they come to us, can teach us so much about how to be consistently inspired. Even if we don't think of ourselves as religious, really, we're never alone. These ideas are with us. The loving, healing, active presence of God is with us. And that presence has a special name. It's Christ. Christ is, among other things, it's ideas from God working in us, ideas from God working for us. And the good news is that Christ presence is right here with us today, even in troubled times, and maybe especially helpful in troubled times, bringing us mental clarity and practical solutions and a feeling of being able to contribute in a good way. In fact, it says in the New Testament, we continue to share in all that Christ has for us. Well, somebody who showed that we continue to share in all that Christ has for us in a really phenomenal way was Mary Baker Eddy. Some of you might know that she's the discoverer of Christian Science, and she's the founder of the church that practices its teachings. And we'll learn more about her as we go along. But no matter what you know or think about Mary Baker Eddy, one thing is pretty indisputable, and that is that she spent untold hours searching for the ideas that would enable her to heal herself and others. Why did she do that? Well, for one thing, she had a rather sickly childhood. And that pushed her to explore and experiment with the healthcare options that were available to her. This was in the 1800s. She looked at hydropathy, which was a water therapy, allopathy, which is, that was the beginnings of typical Western medicine, continues to be allopathy, and homeopathy. Homeopathy was the practice of prescribing a finer and finer dose of the same medication to a patient in hopes of producing desired symptoms. And so as she did this, prayer and Bible study were constant companions too. But, I think especially because of her experiences and experiments with homeopathy, she began to look at the role that thought played in finding healing. And this was a really long-term quest for her. In fact, she wrote in her autobiography, and I'm just going to paraphrase here, for 20 years prior to my discovery of Christian Science, I sought to trace all physical effects to a mental cause. So you can see the trajectory that she's on here. She's looking for the thought behind almost everything that ever happens. Well, then as an adult, Mary Baker Eddy had an accidental fall that resulted in rather serious injury, but she was able to find relief from the fear and even the pain after reading a biblical account of Christ Jesus instantaneously healing a man. And in time, she herself was completely healed. Interestingly, not just of the after effects of the accident, but of the decades of chronic ill health that she had experienced. That had a huge effect on her. I mean, I think it would on anybody, but especially somebody who was trying to trace all physical effects to a mental cause. I mean, she wasn't searching for this necessarily, but she found it. And when that happened, she really wanted to know how her healings took place. I mean, I think maybe like a lot of us, Mary Baker Eddy had turned to prayer before in search of counsel or comfort or guidance. But now her healings, I mean, these undeniable healings brought her the conviction that physical cure could be found in Jesus' words and works and life and teachings. I mean, something really tangible that she could use could be found in this larger understanding of God. Well, she felt like she had to write about this. And so she did in her book, Science and Health, which I've shown here. Which I'll show here now. She was in such a new place, not just with her health, although that was a game changer. I mean, I think for Mary Baker Eddy to feel healthy and able-bodied and well enabled her to teach and travel and preach in a way that would have been difficult before. But an even bigger shift was that of her faith. She'd grown up reading the Bible, going to church with her family, praying together. I mean, they were believers. But now she writes, she's speaking about herself, she says, she learned that her own prayers failed to heal her, as did the prayers of her devout parents and the church. But when the spiritual sense of the creed was discerned in the science of Christianity, this spiritual sense was a present help. That's what we're talking about today, this presence. She summarizes by saying, it was the living, palpitating presence of Christ, truth, which healed the sick. Well, that was big. I mean, and ultimately that insight into the nature of God with us did enable Mary Baker Eddy to consistently heal herself and others. And of course, she felt impelled to show the world how her discovery revolutionized human thought and experience. Why did she call her discovery Christian Science? Well, I hope the Christian part is rather self-evident. Mary Baker Eddy grew up in a devoutly Christian household, and she really sought to follow in Christ Jesus' footsteps as closely as she could. The Bible was her guidebook to life. Science and Health is a companion book, then, that shows us how to do that. So when we're thinking about science, a science is an organized body of ideas that are consistent and provable and repeatable. And Mary Baker Eddy's discovery showed her that there actually is a science that's interwoven all through Christ Jesus' words and works and healing ministry. There's a science there to be discerned and experienced. And Mary Baker Eddy's discovery enabled her to understand something of this science and put her understanding into practice successfully. And then she wrote about her findings in her book, Science and Health, that I've mentioned. Now, this book, together with the Bible, teaches readers to heal themselves and others, and really address even the liability to illness. The Bible, of course, is a timeless guide. It's filled with counsel directly from God, with profound experiences that people had in their communion with God. And of course, it has a record of Christ Jesus' healing ministry. Science and Health is a companion book to the Bible, and it shows the everyday practicality of the Bible's message in a way that is helpful for us today. In particular, it looks at how the healing works that took place both in the Old Testament and then especially in the New Testament can be repeated today. In fact, the last 100 pages of Science and Health are letters that were written by people who were healed just by reading the ideas in the book. Healed by ideas. I mean, I know that can take some reflection, at least for some of us. It can take some thought or some time, really, to kind of wrap our head around how an idea can have a healing impact on the body or on a life. How does that work? I mean, we've talked about that a little already, but just in general, I'll say ideas come to us from God, from divine mind, and work in our consciousness, sometimes in ways that we're not even aware of. But they stir something. They stir something new in consciousness, and that changes our outlook. And that necessarily changes our experience. What's an example of that? I've given one, the fellow with his wisdom teeth. Let me share one that happened to me. When I was in graduate school, I needed to take a 6-hour math exam at the end of the summer. And it would determine whether or not I got to stay in that particular track in graduate school or whether I had to find something else to study. Studying for and then taking that 6-hour exam was about as much fun as it sounds like it would be. And I realized at the beginning, so this was like in June, my test was in August. In June, I began studying. And there was some tension in the math department itself. There were several of us that were taking this test, and I could tell that some kind of competitive feelings or some fear, basically, was present in the department. For my own part, I noticed that every time I sat down to study, I got more nervous. And I started having really acute feelings of inadequacy. And the worst part was my right eye began to twitch practically uncontrollably, practically every minute of the day that I was awake. It didn't hurt, but it was quite distracting, and it just reminded me of my feelings of inadequacy when it would happen. So that went on for a couple weeks. Finally, I realized, okay, this is something I can pray about. So the next time I sat down to study, before I got into the math books, I just spent a few minutes in prayer. My eye was twitching, but I didn't pray about my eye. I wanted to more fully understand the nature of God. That's what I wanted in those moments. And so I thought about God as divine mind. Well, I think love always comes pretty easily to, or pretty quickly in the prayers. So I probably started with love, but I was thinking about divine mind as well, and an infinite mind, and God as this infinite loving source of practical ideas. And I had access to that. I had access to those ideas. Even the very specific, mathematical techniques and theories that would enable me to do well on the exam at the end of August. And suddenly that just sounded so natural. That little bit of praying wiped out some of my fear and calmed me down enough that I could then expand my prayers. All of a sudden the math itself seemed a little bit more welcoming, and I didn't feel as nervous or inadequate. And so I expanded my prayers to include my fellow graduate students. And that felt really good. They had access to these ideas too. And I realized when I thought along those lines, and it felt so reliable and true, I knew those reassurances were coming to me from God. I realized that I didn't need to feel competitive. Why couldn't we all do well? That sounded really good. And from that moment on, the whole feeling of competitiveness or jealousy or fear was melted away. It really was. I started grasping the math concepts much more quickly and found that when I did go into the department and I'd see my fellow grad students studying, I was able to help them with some of the new ideas that I was getting, some of the math techniques. Suddenly, all of it seemed just more welcoming. The test didn't feel like an obstacle as much as it felt like an opportunity for all of us, really. I'm not going to say the studying was fun after that point, but it was much, much better. And the best thing was, after about that 10 minutes of prayer that I just described to you, my eye stopped twitching for good. I only increased my amount of study after that point, and I still felt calm and relaxed and with a quiet sense of authority about the material. And that carried me through to the end, and I successfully took the test at the end of August. So that idea of including my colleagues, that idea that infinite mind was universally accessible, was something that we all could benefit from and was available to all of us, transformed my summer. It certainly did. And my world didn't change, but my thought about it did. And so my experience and the body followed suit right away. So that's another example of an idea transforming a life. That mental nature of life, that mental nature of health, is not something that the news is necessarily talking about today. But it's something that my family has experienced over and over again. We've relied on this kind of scientific, thoughtful prayer, even in times of contagious illness. Certainly colds and flu, but also things like shingles or chickenpox. We've seen quick healings of those by relying on this kind of thoughtful prayer. Thought is key. We cannot escape the mental nature of life and of experience. The vaccines that several pharmaceutical companies have been diligently developing over the last several months might slow or even stop the spread of COVID-19. But for humanity to overcome its vulnerability to pandemics in general, to disease in general, we need to understand better the relationship between thought and experience, between ideas and life and health. Or as Mary Baker Eddy said, to trace all physical effects to a mental cause. If we do find ourselves in a situation where we need to be vaccinated, for work or for travel or something like that, our compliance doesn't have to compromise our reliance on God. Because even in that circumstance, we can refuse to buy into the notion that a vaccine has the power to help or to hurt us. It has no power. But to understand that takes the kind of prayer that we've been talking about today. To understand that takes mental clarity. It takes mental independence. It takes turning away from the infodemic and being guided by ideas that are coming to us straight from God. And they do come. And I'm just going to, before I finish here, reiterate those 3 ideas that I shared about from Jesus about how to be more consistently inspired, how to get this clarity that effectively guides our life forward. And those were hungering and thirsting after obedient living, expressing humility, that just feels good to do, and trusting the ideas when they come to us. Trusting the ideas really bolsters our mental independence and our mental clarity. So I hope and I trust that you'll go forward now feeling more that we're never alone. Ideas from God companion us. They bring us the mental clarity that we need. They wipe out the infodemic and show us a helpful way forward. God loves us. God loves us and blesses us and sends us the ideas that transform our lives. And when we see God as this ongoing, unlimited source of healing, loving ideas, we're able to help transform the lives of others. I mean, addressing things like addiction or unemployment, contagion, violence, racial inequality, and bringing the healing that's needed. The great work, the great example that Christ Jesus gave us is our very best. I mean, we can continue asking ourselves, what would Jesus do? That's very relevant today. And Mary Baker Eddy's life work, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, gives us tools and understanding for following Jesus' example. So let's do this. Let's do this together. Let's watch God's ideas work in us. Let's let love's ideas do the work. They bring the biggest blessings and the best benefits. Thank you, South Lake Tahoe.
Thank you, Melanie. We will now have an intermission featuring more original music from Andrew Brewis.
Thank you again for the introduction. It's good to be back. So this next section of songs hopefully will reflect the talk that we have coming up very shortly by Fujiko, and I'm very honoured to be preceding her. So here we go. This is a song, it's a poem by Doris Peel that I've set to music, and it's called Lullaby for a Child. All the little birds have gone in their nest to sleep, and out in folds I cannot see sleep the woolly sheep, and all the flowers that grow by day, pink, blue and white, just as safe in darkest dark as in the brightest light. For lamb and bird and smallest flower, white, pink or blue, are held all round by God, who says, I am loving you. I am loving while you sleep, in bed or nest or fold. All my darlings, everyone, in my arms I hold. I am loving while you sleep, softly now still. Every bird, every flower, and every land, and you, my child, as well. Oh, every child of mine I keep close to me each hour. So bide you quietly through the night, like bird, like lamb, like flower. I am loving while you sleep, in bed honest or fold. All my darlings, every one, in my arms I hold. I am loving while you sleep, softly now and still. Every bird, every flower, and every land, and you, my child, as well. Every bird, every flower, and every land, and you, my child, as well. Every bird, every flower, and every land, and you, my child, as well. Now this next one is another Bill Luce poem and it's called Make Me as a Child. Father, make me as a child, teachable and free from wrong. I would learn to walk with God. I would hear that angel's song. I would learn to walk with God. I would hear that angel's song. Give to me the lamb-like mind, tender, undefiled. Pride is frail and sin is blind. Father, make me as a child. I would learn to walk with God. I would hear that angel's song. I would learn to walk with God. I would hear that angel's song as a child who runs with joy where the morning winds have blown. So let my feet run swift and free. So let my feet run swift and free. So let my feet run swift and free over paths I have not known. Give to me the newborn heart, gentle, blameless, unbeguiled. Father, make me fearless. Mother, make me mild. Father, make me. Father, make me as a child. I would learn to walk with God. I would hear that angel song. I would learn to walk with God. I would hear that angel song. Father, make me. Father, make me. Father, make me as a child. Now, this next song is by a British lady who was very instrumental in the 1932 hymn book. And this is one of her poems that didn't actually make it into the hymn book. And it's a poem called Safety, and it's based on Psalm 91, and it's written by Violet Hay. He whose thought is lifted ever to the perfect realm of mind, in that secret place abiding, shall a full protection find, safe beneath the Almighty's shade. He shall dwell all unafraid, safe beneath the Almighty's shade. He shall dwell all unafraid. 1,000 errors may confront us, they shall fail on every side. All our ways are kept by angels, all our steps they guard and guide. They who slumber not nor sleep, day and night their watch shall keep, day and night their watch shall keep. He whose thought is lifted ever to the perfect realm of mind, in that secret place abiding, shall a full protection find, safe beneath the Almighty's shade. He shall dwell all unafraid, safe beneath the Almighty's shade. He shall dwell all unafraid. They shall show us love's salvation, teach us how to trample fear. Nothing evil shall befall us, nor shall any plague come near. We our Father's name have known, we will trust in God alone, we will trust in God alone. He whose thought is lifted ever to the perfect realm of mind, in that secret place abiding, shall a full protection find, safe beneath the Almighty's shade. He shall dwell all unafraid, safe beneath the Almighty's shade. He shall dwell, he shall dwell all unafraid. Now, this next one is continuing on with a theme, because this is also a Violet Hay poem. It's always meant a lot to me, these words, and I've written a new setting to it. Some very much loved words. I'm sure you will know the words to this one. This is called From Sense to Soul. From sense to soul, my pathway lies before me. From mist and shadow into truth's clear day, the dawn of all things real is breaking o'er me. My heart is singing, I have found the way. I reach mind's open door, and at its portal I know that where I stand is holy ground. I feel the calm and joy of things immortal. The loveliness of love is all around. My heart is singing, my heart is singing, my heart is singing, I have found the way. My heart is singing, my heart is singing, my heart is singing, I have found the way. The way leads upward and the goal draws nearer. Thought soars, enraptured, fetterless and free. The vision infinite to me goes clearer. I touch the fringes of eternity. My heart is singing, my heart is singing, my heart is singing, I have found the way. My heart is singing, my heart is singing, my heart is singing, I have found the way. My heart is singing, my heart is singing, my heart is singing, I have found the way. Let's all sing together. My heart is singing, my heart is singing, my heart is singing, I have found the way. Your hearts are singing, our hearts are singing, our hearts are singing, we have found the way. One more time. Our hearts are singing, my heart is singing, my heart is singing, I have found the way. My heart is singing, my heart is singing, my heart is singing, I have found the way.
And now we are pleased to welcome back to our Summit Series Fujiko Takai Sainz from Tokyo, Japan, a student, practitioner, and teacher of Christian Science. She is also a member of the Christian Science Board of Lectureship. Fujiko-san is a past president of the Mother Church, the first Church of Christ Scientist in Boston, Massachusetts. She also enjoys visiting Lake Tahoe. Fujiko studies the relationship between prayer and healing, consciousness and reality, spirituality and well-being. Her goal is to find out how we can free ourselves from various limitations. While her husband's job took Fujiko across the United States, she worked as a market research consultant for computer manufacturing companies and taught Japanese language and literature at community colleges and universities. She also taught dance to children. In her mid-30s, Fujiko fell ill and sought healing through different treatments, but none of them gave her a lasting cure. One day, to her surprise, she found that the healings demonstrated by Christ Jesus were possible now and learnable. As soon as she started reading about this system of healing in Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy, a respected American healer and religious leader, she was relieved from various symptoms that had limited her well-being. As she studied and learned more about Christian Science, she witnessed many healings within her family and circle of friends, and eventually received requests to assist others with prayer. After becoming a Christian Science practitioner, one who is in the full-time healing practice, she was asked to talk with doctors and nurses about patients with a desire to practice non-traditional medicine, including prayer and meditation. She also volunteered in a community coalition in hopes of encouraging and enhancing communication between different faith groups that sought well-being in the community. It is with great pleasure that we welcome back Fujiko-san to our summit.
Thank you for the beautiful music. And thank you, Joe, for your introduction. And thank you very much, Melanie, for your talk. Well, I am here to explore some ideas with you, and especially pondering on what we have all experienced in the last year or so, globally together, regardless of places that we have lived. Many of you must have thought about your freedom. You may have thought, maybe I would say, about your health. But you know, health really is an essential part of freedom. And so when I say freedom, I mean mentally, physically, and spiritually. I am talking about this freedom that is lasting and is also health-giving. I am a student of Christian Science, and I use, again, as Melanie had mentioned, we use this Holy Bible and our textbook, Science and Health, with Key to the Scriptures. There's a section in this textbook that says Key to the Scriptures. But you know, the entire book is a key to understand any scriptures that you may be familiar with. I was really happy to hear that someone who was reading the Jewish text, scriptures, or someone who was reading Quran, was saying that when they read Science and Health, they had some deeper spiritual sense of understanding that they had not seen previously. So it is the key to the scriptures for anyone out there who's interested in finding the freedom. There are a couple of things that I love to share. One, which is really written in the Holy Bible, what Christ Jesus had said about freedom. He said, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Ye shall know the truth. What is this truth? Can truth be put in a box? Does it have a label of religion or faith that comes with some doctrines or creed? Or is truth something vast, impartial, and universal? The fact that I am here in 2021 sharing some ideas that I learned from the scriptures, in this case, the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the textbook that was inspired by the words in this book, the Holy Bible, really shows that truth is universal and timeless. It also transcends language. When you think about language, language is only the means to express what we feel in our heart. We try to find the right words to express. Mary Baker Eddy, who wrote this textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, felt this urge to share her spiritual sense of receiving the healing, not in the way that it's a miracle and it may just be a happenstance, but as science. I think that is something is very crucial and important to understand, that when I say science, it is universal and timeless. And when I say discover, when Mary Baker Eddy discovered Christian Science, she did not make it up. It was revealed to her, as we say with the word discover means, to the cover. It's unfolding. Every time you unfold this, perhaps a piece of cloth, maybe it has an embroidery in it, you get to see what's inside. Whatever exists here always existed here. The law, like the law that we use to fly, right now we cannot really fly freely, but the airplane flies because of aerodynamics. That understanding of how things fly is science, and it is shared with everyone. So when I say Christian Science, this science does not belong to one church or Christianity just for its as a creed. This science is something that we can all share to improve, again, that a sense of freedom and health. When I say Christian Science, Christian is used as an adjective. What kind of science is it? In this case, written with capital S. It's a Christian Science because it's based on Christ Jesus' teaching. The Christ meaning the embodiment of one with God, at one with God. There's no separation. As you have heard, Jesus understood God to be our Father, and we are his children. All the qualities of children that you admire help us to understand not just of ourselves, but our relationship with God. Mary Baker Eddy said in one of the booklet called No and Yes, that science is that which reveals and interprets God and man. It is not top-down teaching that asks you to believe something. It asks you to think. It asks you to seek. It asks you to feel what is right for you. Mary Baker Eddy made sure that these qualities, first written, the very first page of the preface of this textbook, it says, "The time for thinkers has come. Truth independent of doctrines and time-honored systems knocks at the portal of humanity." Here we go again. Truth independent of doctrines and time-honored systems. Time-honored systems restrict us and tries to keep us in the box. That's what we are trying to get out. Not so much out of the box, but to understand that we have never been inside the box to begin with. Every discovery, every scientific discovery, it was about leaving the old for the new. This is why it's important to understand when Jesus said, unless, here he says, except you are converted and become as little children. you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Why did he say that? When his disciples were arguing who would be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, he said, unless you become like, or convert, return to become like these children, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Well, as an adult, we know we stuff so much information in us. We learn theories, we learn laws, material laws. And as we are growing up, unknowingly, we forget that we have this capacity to think not only freely, but to receive an insight, inspiration, intuition directly from divine consciousness. And that divine consciousness is our Father. That Jesus understood where he came from. All his teachings came from the words that he had shared, the healing he had demonstrated. He never took credit that these were his. He always attributed these actions, the healing demonstration, or the words to our Father. This is why it is natural that when we see people are healed in the Bible, in this New Testament, nobody turn around and worship Jesus. They always praise God. Jesus' sense of understanding everything coming from this divine consciousness, the advanced consciousness that speaks to our consciousness, not stuffing things in our brain, really will bring freedom. A truth comes from divine consciousness. Mary Baker Eddy says this: willingness to become as a little child and to leave the old for the new renders thought receptive of the advanced idea. To become like a little child and to receive advanced ideas, it almost sounds contradictory. That I thought maybe the adults were worthy of receiving the advanced ideas. No, she's saying this to leave the old for the new. The children are very good at this because they don't cling to the past, or you may say they don't have the past. They are always living in the now. They're always living in this moment, not just time-wise moment, but space-wise. Everything that they embrace, they become one with. And that's another important thing that I learned in the healing practice, that oneness not only with our Father, but also oneness with those who are around us. It also could be the plants, like the plants behind me, the environment. The places that we are seeing is not somehow cut off in compartmentalized reality. We are all part of one reality, one consciousness. You know, in the last year, whole year, something had changed, not just to us. I just watched a film by David Attenborough, and the film was called The Year the World Changed. While we were not traveling around with the airplane or running around with, cars, also in the ocean with less pollution, nature is thriving. Animals, creatures are thriving. We are beginning to see the behaviors and sounds that we have never even heard before. We cannot separate ourselves from our environment. And if you know that your environment is spiritual, not material, spiritual, pure, you know that you yourself is part of that spiritual and pure environment. The children can accept this more easily. Children have this innate sense of wanting to see good and knowing there's dependable and generous power that only knows good and sends good. That's what children feel, and it's in one of the Japanese pop songs that I often share. It goes something like, when I was little, there was God, and every day he delivered love to me. He made my dreams come true. I'm no longer a child, but still when I wake up, enveloped in sweet, loving kindness, a miracle can happen. When I'm enveloped in the soft fragrance of gardenia, right after the rain, surely all you see becomes a message. Well, how does your environment or a stem of a plant or rose become a message? The only reason it comes to us as message is because we have spiritual sense. And that spiritual sense is within us, within this child that we still have. Sometimes we need to remind ourselves that we still have that child within us. And it is perhaps sometimes hard to let go of the old for the new. But as it says here in the textbook, if you want an advanced idea, the idea that would free you, as Jesus said, ye shall know the truth. That truth must be the advanced ideas. Advanced ideas is not just the physics that will take us to the outer space, these wonderful accomplishments taking place. But something within us we need to really understand, that without going out into the space, we can find that freedom, stability, purity, harmonious environment that we would love to be living in, which is spiritual. One of the healing stories involved llamas. One of the llamas that our family took up to the Rockies had to climb up 11,000 feet. They are used to high altitude, so they're helping to carry a lot of heavy loads. One time when we were up in that plateau trying to pitch our tents, we noticed that one of the llamas was coughing in a very disturbing way. When we arrived at the plateau where we were going to pitch our tents, we noticed that one of the llamas was coughing in a very disturbing way. It's a very deep cough, and it just persisted. And finally, the owner of the llama said that llama had to go. Well, 6-year-old niece was listening to him and immediately said, no, in a very loud voice, no, my mother doesn't say that when I cough. I realized that what she understood by him saying that llama had to go was not as I was thinking, that llama had to go to a vet. He meant that llama had to put to sleep. But to this, the 6-year-old protested and said, no, my mother doesn't say that when I cough. Well, she asked me to pray with her for the llama. We were just about to leave to this beautiful lake to fish, but she said, no, Fujiko, we're staying here and pray for Tony. That was the llama's name. I couldn't say no to her. She was so serious, and she asked me how to pray. So I said, well, this llama, Tony, is a beautiful, precious child, precious creature that God created. And as I'm saying this, in the back of my head, I'm saying, well, this is the ugliest llama I have ever seen, because it had an underbite like this. But it was just that what I was truly thinking and I was trying to share with this girl was completely different. But it didn't matter. The 6-year-old sat down and started to pray. And soon she tagged my jacket and said, "Fujiko, Tony is not coughing anymore." Well, my eyes were still closed, and I told her to wait. What am I waiting for? I'm waiting to make sure that this Lama doesn't cough just one more time, to make sure this healing is complete. Well, she closed her eyes again, and in a minute or so, she tagged my jacket firmly and said, "Fujiko, Tony is healed." I like to share this healing account with you because we hear often that prayer is a placebo or positive thinking, something that we say that we somehow mentally influence one another. But in this case, Tony was far away, first of all. We didn't talk to Tony, but this healing happened. He never coughed even once, ever after that time that we both sat down and acknowledged, and especially this girl, the niece, is acknowledging how perfect and loved this creature was, that God made Tony. Well, I also like to share this healing account because it reminds me of something that I read in this textbook, where it says, "Stand porter at the door of thought, admitting only such conclusions as you wish realized in bodily results. You will control yourself harmoniously." Standing porter at the door of thought. This girl was only seeing the outcome of this prayer, which was complete health. No death but life, only love. She loved this creature. It was not like this Lama was her pet, but she had this instant ability to love this animal. So pure in a way that didn't ask for a reward, only wanting to make sure the outcome was good. And that really made her harmonious. It says, why is it important that she herself feeling harmonious, bringing this healing? I thought of this for a while. And recently I came to see that when we are harmonious with this one divine consciousness that only knows good and sends good, we see what God had already made things to be, whether it's this Lama or nature or ourselves. It was not changing something bodily structure somehow to bring this healing. It was to recognize by calming ourselves to align our thought with that divine consciousness that had already made us perfect, including this Lama. It was revealed. Unfoldment took place to show that all animals not only were being loved, but had this health already within him. In another case, this is in the case in the hospital, but Dr. Barnard Lown, that I respect very much, he used to be a cardiologist in Boston area. And he also received a Nobel Peace Prize in 1985 for co-founding International Physicians for Prevention of Nuclear War with a scientist, a physician, in Soviet Union, USSR. It was quite controversial at the time because it was during the Cold War that he started to contact, and all the doctors signed up because they knew their mission and duty was to save humanity, regardless of what kind of country that they came from. That they knew all the doctors in the whole world could not save men and women, children, if nuclear war had happened. But anyway, he not only received this, but also was interviewed one time in the radio program called Infinite Mind. And in it, he said, one day a patient was brought in after a massive heart attack, and he did not know what to do. He was consulting with other doctors as well. But one day, a nurse informed him that this patient's vital signs were improving, and in 2 weeks, this patient left with a perfect heart. When the patient came back, he asked him what happened. And the patient said, "Doctor, I remember the date and even the time when I started to feel I was getting better." He said, "You were all with other doctors standing in the corner of the room. And I heard you say, actually whispering to other doctors, go listen to that patient's heartbeat for the wholesome gallop. Go listen to his heartbeat for the wholesome gallop." Well, the patient said somehow he looked at the clock at that time. That's why he remembered exactly what time he started to mend. Well, what this patient didn't know was that gallop in cardiology means a huge gap. And because it was such a terrible gap that even Dr. Lang had never heard such bad gallop, that he added this adjective wholesome cynically. He didn't mean healthy, really. He was just saying the opposite. But since he was in the patient's room, he just said wholesome gallop. Well, that patient had left, still had a very healthy heart when he came back for a checkup. I was wondering if Mary Baker Eddy had written anything to explain that kind of phenomenon. And she says this here, I found on page 198. A patient's belief is more or less molded and formed by his doctor's belief in the case, even though the doctor says nothing to support his theory. His thoughts and his patient's commingle, and the stronger thoughts rule the weaker. Hence the importance that doctors be Christian Scientists. Well, everything Mary Baker Eddy had written in here, she experienced. She observed. She thought through, why do these things happen? There are more cases like this than people may hear, but we will hear more and more because even doctors are not hesitant to share these stories. Dr. Lown started to go around the medical schools in America and started to speak to the students that they cannot determine how long a person would live or die. Because from his own experience, the only thing that doctors can do is to read the data and to base on the statistics. But he came to realize man cannot be pushed into this box of statistics. I regard this kind of scientist as someone who is willing to leave the old for the new, for the advanced ideas. Dr. Lown had known science and health because he was introduced to Christian Science and was interviewed in the Christian Science periodical called Christian Science Sentinel. It was 2004, February 17th issue. And the title of that interview is called For the Love of Healing. Dr. Lown's last name is spelled Lown, in case if you're interested in reading that interview. But there are many cases like this that what so-called hard science may not be able to explain. But just because it cannot be explained in certain terminology or the premise of certain laws doesn't mean that it's not real. This is why it's important to understand that not only the last 100 pages of this textbook, Science and Health, consist of letters sent by the readers who were healed simply by reading this textbook, but also we continue to keep records of healing and publish them in Christian Science Sentinel, the Christian Science Journal, that's a monthly issue, and the Herald of Christian Science in many different languages. I would like to share this one statement in here. It's actually a scientific statement of being. It goes like this: there is no life, truth, intelligence, nor substance in matter. All is infinite mind and its infinite manifestation, for God is all in all. The matter, so to speak, stuffed a body with certain organ, we think that's man. But we have seen again and again, in case of Dr. Lown's story as well, that the patient acquiring this perfect heart is not because somebody manipulated, but it was the truth, underlying truth revealed how he is actually made in the image and likeness of God. In the Bible, it's also a Jewish text, but in Genesis, the first chapter describes how man were made in the image and likeness of God. It says, God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So God created man in his own image, in the image of God. Created he him, male and female, created he them. Well, it's saying that image and likeness. What is an image and likeness? It's actually children. When you say, well, someone reminds you of that little child's mother or grandmother, because that child bears the image and likeness of either parent or grandparents, or maybe aunt or uncle. That image and likeness is not like a stamp, like a repetition of all the stamps that you put on the paper. We are never made exactly the same. Why? Because God is infinite. That divine consciousness is never in a box or has outline. We are never inside the outline trying to come out. We are simply children of God, the children of spirit. When I say there is no life, truth, intelligence, nor substance in matter, we're not giving intelligence, the limited sense of life in what we can feel just with our five senses. Five senses, as you know, are so limited. We cannot see beyond certain distance. We cannot hear certain frequencies. I know, like, the elephants can hear lower frequencies that we cannot hear. even everything that we feel, we're certain that we have evidence of, that's very shaky, can I say? It's not, first of all, scientific if it was changing left and right. Theories and information that we gain from material senses, five senses, can change when some new discoveries is introduced. I think that's why science, the word science, is important, because again, we're willing to leave the old for the new. And it's always advancing to find more freedom. The fact that I can speak to you using this technology is part of gaining more freedom. If this was a previous pandemic, we will not have this lecture here. But we must have been advancing and leaving old for the new, so we are able to share ideas using the internet. Eventually, we may be able to communicate even in a different mode, using different modes. We cannot stop thinking that this is the end of advancement. It keeps revealing itself if we understand that there is no life, truth, intelligence, nor substance in matter. And we cannot be scared or be fearful of the material sense reports. We may say testimonies that five senses telling us, and when you turn on the television and seeing the number of infections going up and down, or the number of vaccines available or not, or it may also be the news from another country. We cannot be going up and down every time the news is reporting us that we should be, that we are vulnerable, that we are helpless. We need to protest, like that little girl was saying, no, this is not what God sees and created. That healing is taking place as we are receiving this right message from the divine consciousness. And that is what Jesus understood and known for his healing. He had been given this title, the Christ, because he understood this oneness. Baker Eddy says about the Christ, Christ is a true idea voicing good, the divine message from God to man, speaking to the human consciousness. Human consciousness at this harmonious state, receiving that good news. That's actually the original meaning of gospel, is the source, is the healing message. It is not limited for people who are in particular religion or people believing in God or not. Universally, we have seen healing taking place in different parts of cultures and continent way before the Western medicine was introduced. We can really be like a child, embracing this whole idea that we're living in this spiritual environment, and we are the image and likeness of one divine consciousness, that love. We may use capital L to express God, life. That's love without limit and life without fear. One more example of healing that I witnessed in Pennsylvania with my neighbors, my neighbor. My neighbor was very spiritually minded person. I met her not because we are in the same neighborhood, but our children were about the same age and they went to same elementary school. At the bus stop, she would always share how she's taking care of her body, the right kind of nutrients, exercise, things like that. So I knew she was interested in health. And I also knew she was going to a church in the neighborhood. One day, I received a call from her husband that she was hospitalized because she incurred blood poison from bacteria infection. And that winter, we had lost one of the dear teacher in one of the teachers in our school district. So there was much fear in the newspaper or on the radio at that time. I wanted to share with her some ideas from these two books. I knew she had the Bible. I wanted to take her science and health, but because of the nature of the illness being infectious disease, I was not allowed to go visit her. And even her own family members had a very short visit after wearing all sorts of cover to make sure that none of the infection was spread. But I kept thinking how much the ideas that I learned from this textbook would help her. I wrote some letters that I ended up not sending, but in my mind, I was composing some ideas that may help her. After a couple weeks, her husband called me and said his wife was back. And I thought maybe she was already well. But he said, no, unfortunately, she incurred another infection, and the doctor said being in the hospital may be more dangerous right now, so keep her in her house. So she returned. But he asked me to please go check on her the following day and walk the dog because he was going to be out of town for a business meeting. So I just thought, okay, I can do that. And perhaps I can take this textbook with me. For the first time, after thinking for so many weeks of how to share, this opportunity just came to me. So the following morning I walked in. Of course, the dog notices and made lots of noises. And soon I saw the shadow of Tracy, is her name, coming out of her bedroom, holding onto the walls, sliding her feet. I could hear her moving slowly. And finally, when she came out, she propped herself down into the sofa, the closest sofa. And she looked up to me and not saying good morning to me, but she said, Fujiko, it is God's will for me to die. I said, no, that is not God's will. God is life. God is love. She didn't look like she was really listening. She looked so sad and weak, emaciated. Her colors were so dark, almost purple. I was told that she had not been eating much in the last couple of weeks, at least in the hospital. The curtains were drawn down and not much light was in the room. Well, the dog didn't know that we were feeling sad or dark. It just keeps asking me to take her for a walk. So I said to Tracy, I will leave this textbook with you. It helped me so much. and maybe I can read it later, or maybe your husband can, but this is your textbook. This is your book. Well, I went for a walk. The contrast was such that I was immediately uplifted because outside was bright. It was spring morning, and many flowers were starting to bloom, and the dog was so happy. You know, the tail is wagging and looking at me. To me, dogs smile too. She was smiling at me. And after 20 minutes or so, when I returned to that dark room, I could not even see for a moment because it was so dark and bright outside and dark inside. I told Tracy I will come back with something for her to eat for lunch. And she said, please don't bother to bring anything because I cannot keep anything down. Well, after I had my lunch, I came back with a little lunch, but this time instead of coming in from the front door, I came in from the kitchen door, which is a little further from her bedroom. It has two doors, first into mudroom, and then the second door after a few steps into the kitchen. When I opened the door that led to the kitchen, Tracy was standing there, fully dressed, strong, with a completely beautiful complexion. She was shining. She had her spectacles on, glasses on, her clothes on, always dressed beautifully, and with her hand on her hip. And she said, "Hi, Fujiko." I said, "Hi, Fujiko." "Tracy, what happened?" Well, she said, just matter of factory, well, I was looking at that book. In fact, when I saw her last time, she was trying to read the very first line on this preface, tracing this one sentence back and forth, which was, "To those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today is big with blessings." That's the last time I saw her opening this book. She said, when I was looking at that book, although she could not focus, her eyes were so weak, she said a thought came to her to take a shower. And so she did. While she was taking a shower, she said another thought came to not go back to bed, but change. So she went to her room, changed, and came out, put her spectacles on, and realized how messy the room was. She said she started picking things up and just started doing the laundry. She was in the kitchen to clean up the stack of dishes that her husband had left. Earlier, when she came out, being so weak and looking so pale, she didn't notice these things. But this time she did. The following morning, her husband called me and said, "Fu," that's how he called me, "Fu, what happened yesterday?" So I said, "Well," and I tried to explain what happened. He said, "Oh, never mind. I had to beg her to go to bed at 10:30 at night." She was like a energized bunny, those little thing that never stops. That was the healing that I witnessed. This is why, with confidence, I can say that what I just read earlier, there is no life, truth, intelligence, no substance in matter. All is infinite mind and its infinite manifestation. For God is all in all. It was that infinite mind, divine consciousness, making, moving, maintaining all along. And it revealed to me, there was an unfoldment, opening up this beautiful cloth, like the roll, the scripture, the embroidery was revealed. There's a healthy Tracy, my friend, standing there. it was not unnatural to her because she was not either startled, she was not even say, why did this happen, Fujiko? She was just saying these messages came to her and she just followed. And what are these messages? These are the messages that I have mentioned earlier. The Christ, the true idea voicing good. God, divine message speaking to every human consciousness. Well, the following weekend, this happened on Monday, she was rollerblading with her two daughters. And the following week, we had teacher-parent conference that she asked her sister-in-law to go. But because she was strong and completely well, she went to the conference, and coming home around the same time, she revealed to me that, Fujiko, I forgot to tell you that my mother had passed when she was about my age. I didn't know what to say. And I understood why she said it was God's will for me to die, because she shared this story that when her mother passed, she was so upset and angry, sad and angry. She went to her teacher. She went to a Christian school and she asked her teacher, why did my mother have to die? And the teacher said, she had to die for our sin. I asked her, Tracy, do you believe that we're taking our lives away because of others' sin? And she said, no. She innately felt that God was love, that love will never take away the beloved child or mother, as a almost punishment because of others' sin. She had become a student of Christian Science, and her family experienced many healings. I am so grateful because each of these stories really prove that discovery of Christian Science is not something so radical that people need to be alarmed, but we need to pay attention to, because it brings more explanations to this kind of phenomenon, but also to bring us a freedom that's lasting freedom, not temporary, easily taken away freedom. It's not based on other people's power, but based on our relationship with God. Mary Baker, it is always with love, because this has to be Christian Science. It has to be loving science. If science is just cold, selfish, it's not in a truest sense science, because it doesn't advance humanity to acquire this freedom. She says in this textbook, emerge gently from matter into spirit. Think not to thwart the spiritual ultimate of all things, but come naturally into spirit through better health and morals, and as the result of spiritual growth. The only growth we have is spiritual growth. The only sense we have is spiritual sense. The only environment that we're in is spiritual environment, that we live and move and have our being as the image and likeness of God, the pure, harmonious children of God. Thank you.
Thank you, Fujiko. That was great. That was, as always, very enlightening. And thank you also, Melanie, for sharing with us. Again, if you would like a copy of Science and Health or the Bible, please remember to email us at firstchurchslt@gmail.com. And now Andrew will provide a musical close to our 2021 Spiritual Summit with more of his original compositions.
Goodness me. Okay, that was wonderful. So I'm going to close the show, as they say, with some more, hopefully uplifting music and some time to take in and imbibe those thoughts that have been shared with us this afternoon, and to send you home with those thoughts ringing in our ears. Okay, here's a version of In Heavenly Love Abiding. In heavenly love abiding, no chains my heart shall fear, and safe is such confiding, for nothing changes here. The storm may roar without me, my heart may low be laid, God is round about me, and can I be dismayed? Wherever He may guide me, the one shall turn me back. My shepherd is beside me, nothing can I lack. His wisdom ever waketh, His sight is never dim. He knows the way that He taketh, and I will walk with Him. Pastures are before me, which yet I have not seen. Bright skies will soon be o'er me, where darkest clouds have been. My hope I cannot measure, my path in life is free. Father has my treasure, and He will walk with me. My Father has my treasure, and He will walk with me. You'll know the words to this next one. This is a version of a hymn in our 1932 hymn book called I Love to Tell the Story. I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and His glory, of Jesus and His love. I love to tell the story because I know it's true. It satisfies my longing as nothing else can do. I love to tell the story. It is my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and His love. to tell a story. 'Tis pleasant to repeat what seems each time I tell it more wonderfully sweet. I love to tell the story, for some have never heard the message of salvation from God's own holy word. Yes, I love to tell the story. It is my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. I love to tell a story for those who know it best. See my hungering and thirsting to hear it like the rest. I love to tell the story, to sing the new song. That is the old story that I have loved so long. I love to tell the story, and it's my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. Jesus and his love. Of Jesus and his love. Jesus and his love. Jesus and his love. Of Jesus and his love. This next one is a favorite of mine, and it's a version of Psalm 23, and the words have been adapted by Fenella Bennett, and it's one of my favorite songs. My shepherd, he is love divine. He meets my every need. Where fields are green and waters still, I rest, I drink, I feed. Where fields are green and waters still, I rest, I drink, I feed. His love restores my thirsty soul, guides me safely on in paths of truth and righteousness as his beloved son. In paths of truth and righteousness as his beloved son. And even when the shade of death suggests that we may part, fear of evil enters here, strength and guidance ever near, brings comfort to my heart. When the shade of death suggests that we may part, no fear of evil enters here, strength and guidance ever near, brings comfort to my heart, to my heart. His goodness spreads before my eyes, no enemy he knows. His oil is poured upon my head, my cup it overflows. His oil is poured upon my head, my cup it overflows. His grace and mercy every day bring blessings from above. I'm living in the house of God, the consciousness of love. I'm living in the house of God, the consciousness of love. I'm living in the house of God as His beloved Son. Okay, this is the song called This is the Time to Pray, and it's another William Luce song. This is the time when the world must pray to hear the Father's plan. This is the time to break down each wall and free the suffering man. This is the time to forget the past, to find a better way. This is the time when heart meets heart. This is the time, yes, this is the time to pray. This is the time to be strong and bold, to fight for what is right. This is the time for a song of joy to end the lonely night. This is the time for clouds of strife to fade and melt away. This is the time to pray. This is the time to pray. This is the time when the world must pray to see the Father's plan. This is the time to break down each wall, free the suffering man. This is the time to forget the past, to find a better way. This is the time when heart meets heart. This is the time, this is the time to pray. This is the time when the streams of hope must overflow the land. This is the time to put all your faith into the Father's hands. This is the time to make war and hate the dreams of yesterday. This is the time to pray. This is the time. This is the time to pray. This is the time when the world must pray to see the Father's plan. This is the time to break down each wall and free the suffering man. This is the time to forget the past, to find a better way. This is the time when heart meets heart. This is the time. Yes, this is the time to pray. Now, just one more from me before I send you on your way, and I look forward to being with you all in person, hopefully, this time next year. So thank you so much for having me as part of your spiritual summit today. It's been a joy and honor, and I hope I've added a small part to that. So we're going to finish with a hymn which is actually in our new hymn book, but I'm going to sing it as a song version, and it's called The 3 L's for Life, and the words are by Jill Gooding, CSB, and here we go, 3 L's for Life. Lean on the sustaining infinite, blessings will be yours. Lean not on person, place, or thing, or economic laws, but lean upon all blessing God, who will all needs supply, and give to all abundant good that money cannot buy. So lean and let and love. This is the balanced way. It's free from self-will, pressure, stress. It welcomes in God's day. The leaning is so gentle. The letting is so free. And loving is the only way to think and speak and be. Let the healing rain of truth and love, the rain of love divine, be now established within me to show God's clear design of oneness indivisible, of God and me as one, as water is to ocean wave, a sunbeam is to sun. Lean and let and love. This is the balanced way. It's free from self-will, pressure, stress. It welcomes in God's day. The leaning is so gentle. The letting is so free. And loving is the only way to think and speak and be. Love with a heart of tenderness your enemies and friends, however hard this may appear, this quality just meant. For love is God in action true, presence that is felt, a healing and a saving power that will all discord melt. So lean and let and love. This is the balanced way. It's free from self-will, pressure, stress. It welcomes in God's day. The leaning is so gentle. The letting is so free. And loving is the only way to think and speak and be. Loving is the only way to think and speak and be. And loving is the only way to think and speak and be. Thank you.
Thanks again, Andrew, and a huge thank you to all for joining us today. I would also like to thank the members of our church for sponsoring these summits, and a special thanks to my co-chair on the lecture committee, Cindy Cowan. Thanks again. See you next year.